Lower the Cost of Energy Act, the Lower Cost of Energy Act, it's a top priority for House Republicans. It includes a package of energy-related bills, the kind of things that House Majority Leader Steve Scalise is including in his BREEZE Act. This morning, Congressman Scalise is with us to talk about that. And right now, you've been working, and Republicans have been working, well, Democrats have too, for energy independence. There has been controversy between the two parties on just how to go about energy independence.
Yeah, Eric, and this is something that we've been talking about for a long time. Now that we're in the majority, we said if we get the majority, we're going to bring bills on very specific things, and energy was one of those, to become energy independent, again, a lower cost for families. And so I've been working with all the chairmen of the relevant committees. We've got 3 major committees in Congress that deal with energy policy in the House. And so this week we're going to be filing the Lower Energy Costs Act, and this is a bill that takes all the different pieces that are needed to allow our country to be energy independent again. So we need more permits, we need more lease sales. You just saw another lease sale canceled by the Biden administration last week. We need more infrastructure like pipelines. And right now it's very hard even to get the permits for pipelines. And in fact, you have about 5 different federal agencies that stand in your way. So we're going to create a one-stop shop so that we can move a lot of these projects further along. And the bottom line is we shouldn't be getting our energy from foreign countries, whether it's Russia or Iran or Saudi Arabia or Venezuela. We can make our own. We do it cleaner than anybody else in the world, and it creates really good jobs here at home.
And I think most people agree with that. The BREEZE Act that you're introducing tomorrow just goes along with that, but it also includes getting more money from offshore oil production in the Gulf, including what is the wave of the future, clean energy with wind.
Yeah, this bill, the Lower Energy Costs Act, which the BREEZE Act will now be a part of, that I'm filing tomorrow, encompasses not just oil and gas, it also deals with renewable sources of energy. So we're seeing a lot of interest in the Gulf of Mexico, for example, by windmill companies. So they want to look at building windmills in the Gulf, just like we have deep water oil rigs. And first of all, we want to fix the revenue sharing. Right now in the Gulf of Mexico, Louisiana doesn't get the same fair share of drilling revenues that states onshore get. So right now it's 37.5% that Louisiana is able to get from offshore drilling. Onshore it's 50%. That's a problem that goes back to the 1950s. Yeah. And so we're working to solve that. And then of course, for wind right now, there's absolutely no revenue sharing. So at the beginning stages, as we're finally starting to get interest in big billions of dollars of development in the Gulf of Mexico, I want to make sure that we in Louisiana get the same revenue sharing that we would get with oil. That also helps us restore our coast. That money would be dedicated to coastal restoration in Louisiana, which is important.
Oil is still going to be around for decades. I mean, yeah. That's just a fact of life. But even the oil companies are diversifying. They're looking more at electric vehicles, at wind energy, things like that.
Yeah, this should be an all of the above strategy. It shouldn't be one versus the other. And, you know, this idea that you can just get rid of fossil fuels in the next 10 years is not realistic. Yeah, it's not, and it's not, by the way, good for our economy or the world's. China's building a coal plant every week while you see America shutting down the ability to produce oil and natural gas. It makes no sense. Let's be independent. And by the way, if we're able to be energy independent, it allows us to export our energy to our allies around the world who right now are getting their energy from Russia. We shouldn't be giving a dime to Russia and helping their economy. Let's make sure that we can help our economy, lower costs for families, and help our friends around the world all at the same time.
And if I can switch gears, there's been a lot of controversy after the Speaker of the House gave Tucker Carlson of Fox News the 41,000 hours of video. Capitol Police were not happy with that. Then over the weekend, former Vice President Pence said, and going back to January 6th, he said, make no mistake about it, what happened in the days is a disgrace. It mocks the decency to portray it any other way. President Trump was wrong. His reckless words endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol that day. History will hold Donald Trump accountable for January 6th. And this comes on the heels of that, what I was talking about, all that tape released to Tucker Carlson, who made it sound like it was more of a tour guide on January 6th rather than an insurrection.
Well, first of all, I thought that getting the video out, not just to Tucker Carlson, but to all the media is something
Well, they
that's
haven't done
important.
that yet.
And that's coming. And I've talked to the speaker myself, and he said it will be made available to everybody. We've actually been working with Capitol Police. And even in the Tucker Carlson video, he blurred things out that the January 6th committee did not blur out.
However,
they put some
he
things
did
out
give a
there.
narrative that showed a different from what we all saw happened.
Well, look, I was very clear from that day forward that there was incredible violence that never should have happened that day. The people who broke into the Capitol ought to be held accountable, and you've seen that too. But at the same time, the fact that there was only a one-sided January 6th committee that didn't get the full picture out was a problem from day one. And also, just looking into why the Capitol wasn't better prepared prior to January 6th. There have been questions raised for a long time. You know, was National Guard help turned down by the leadership in Congress at the time prior to January 6th? Those questions haven't been answered, and we're looking into that as well.
Those are valid questions. Are you surprised by the former vice president's remarks about Mr. Trump and accountability?
Well, look, I mean, it was a very emotional day for Mike Pence, for all of us who were in the Capitol that day, but he himself was targeted, and that shouldn't have happened either. You know, that there were people bringing nooses around saying, hang Mike Pence. That should have never happened, and we denounced that as well. But at the end of the day, the people that are responsible are the people who broke into the Capitol and attacked police. There were clearly many police. I was at the Capitol the next day and provided lunch for all the Capitol police officers, and you could see a lot of them had their fists were bloodied. It was an incredibly rough day for the Capitol Police who had to go through that. So nobody should be minimizing that. And look, even Tucker mentioned that there was a lot of violence that day too. But at the end of the day, let's make sure people are held accountable, not just for that day, but what about the summer right before when you had cities all across America being burned down and nobody was held accountable? There's a lot of frustration that there ought to be an equal treatment under the law for everybody who breaks the law.
And quickly, we got to talk about the banking industry right now. A couple of big banks collapsing. The SVB was the big one. That sent shockwaves. I mean, Wall Street right now is kind of tanking. They're concerned about it. President Biden just made remarks that they are going to shore up at least those depositors' accounts and make sure they're made whole.
Yeah, and if you look at Silicon Valley Bank, it seems like they were not very well diversified. You know, they're right there in Silicon Valley. The lion's share, like over 80% of their investors are not even FDIC insured investors. And it seemed like they were heavily invested in the tech industry,
Well,
which,
and
as you
then they
see,
had $40
is having some
billion
problems
withdrawn
right now.
at once.
Yeah,
know?
well, there's got to be some real accountability. You know, there's reports that the top leadership at that bank had taken out some money and even given bonuses to their employees right before the federal takeover. So they probably knew some things that were going on and maybe acted inappropriately. That needs to be investigated. The most important thing is that it's not a systemic-wide problem, but there's panic that can come from this. You don't want to see runs on banks who are right now solvent because you had a few banks that weren't doing things the right way, and that needs to be investigated heavily.
And quickly, we had a similar situation here in town with First NBC.
Yeah, and they were one of the largest collapses at the time. Obviously, a big investigation regarding the loans that
There's
were being made and whether it was
yeah.
appropriate or not. Obviously, when you have a big collapse of a bank, you need to have investigations, and most importantly, you need to have accountability. If people did things wrong, they need to be held accountable because ultimately it affects everybody in every bank, because FDIC right now and Treasury are working to set up a separate fund where they're going to charge other banks, healthy banks, to bail out these two banks. There shouldn't be a federal bailout. I'm very strongly opposed to any kind of taxpayer bailout of the banks that had their own problems. Go have the federal government step in, as they are doing right now, but hold the leadership accountable of those banks.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much. And quickly, do you see bipartisan support for the bills you're putting in?
There really should be. I mean, I think most people want to lower energy costs. They want to be independent from foreign nations. And by the way, nobody makes energy cleaner around the world. Why ship it in from foreign countries that don't have the environmental protections we've got?
All right, Congressman Scalise, thank you very much.
Great being with you.